Polestar calls this Scandinavian minimalism. Clean lines, uncluttered design, the whole Nordic Zen thing. But let me tell you what's going on inside the Swedish SUV. 12 ultrasonic parking sensors, 5 cameras, 1 LiDAR unit, and an NVIDIA supercomputer. If this is minimalism, then my kitchen also has a minimalist coffee maker that doubles as a particle accelerator. Something tells me we need to have a conversation about what words actually mean. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. So the question is, does all this tech make you a better driver, or does it make you feel like you should be a better driver? Because there is a difference between having every sensor known to mankind and actually using that information for a better connection to the road. In this episode, we're going to find out on which side of that equation the Swedish SUV falls. And before we get into what it's like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. This 3 is Polestar's first proper SUV, and it's built on the SPA2 platform shared with Volvo. It's actually built in South Carolina for the North American market. There are 2 motors here. Combined, the electric motors make 517 horsepower and 671 pounds of torque. Battery size is 111 kilowatt hours. Range is said to be 279 miles. Max charge rate is 250 kilowatts. This is all-wheel drive with a torque vectoring dual-clutch rear axle with a disconnect function. Steering's electrically assisted with 3 different levels of assist. There's a dual chamber air suspension with adaptive dampers that adjust at 500 hertz. Brakes are 4-piston Brembos at the front with 400 millimeter rotors, single piston at the rear with 390 millimeter rotors. And as you can see, those calipers are finished in Swedish Racing Gold. Wheels and tires are 22s, 265 wide at the front, 295 at the rear. Towing capacity is 3,500 pounds, curb weight is 5,800 pounds, and weight distribution is actually 50-50. And on this channel, we know it's not static weight distribution that counts, it's how you use it. A quick word about this Polestar 3's NVIDIA unit. Its computing power puts it way ahead of Tesla's full self-driving unit and whatever Elon is tweeting about on a Tuesday. It's rated at 254 TOPS of processing power, which stands for tera operations per second. To put that in perspective, your smartphone does about 5 TOPS. For advanced driver assist, it's paired with a full suite of sensors, including the LiDAR unit. This car's computer could run Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings while simultaneously calculating the optimal route to avoid traffic, monitoring 12 different safety systems, and still have enough computing power left over to judge your Spotify playlist and do a better job curating it. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. There's no avoiding the topic of minimalism when we're talking about this Polestar 3, especially when we're talking about the interior. From a fundamental standpoint, this driver interface is just fine, but it's that minimalism that makes things a little bit more complicated. For starters, we have a minimalist controller for the seat. It's a single knob on the side of the seat, and there's a push button, and the way it works is intuitive. However, when you want to adjust the steering column, you've got to do that through the big screen. As well, where do you think the outboard mirror controls are? Also in the big screen. Once you get everything set up here, I've got a perfect seating position. Really love this seat. It's exceptionally supportive, it's comfortable, it's heated, it's cooled, it'll massage you. The Napa leather is a fine finish. That minimalist ethos carries over to the ergonomics. For example, the shifter is a dual function stock. So when you need it to shift, it'll shift. For example, now we're stopped. I can put it in reverse, put it in park. When we're on the move, however, this is actually a control for the adaptive cruise control. believe it or not. Then to adjust the speed of the adaptive cruise, we use these switches on the side of the steering wheel. I suppose the only other conventional control is the turn signal stalk. That also controls the wipers, although you can just simply leave those on auto and let them do their thing. After that, every other control is in this screen. Problem is there are just several functions where I'd like a button. Like, give me a button. For example, you have to press the car button when you're stopped, and then you press the open trunk button. Well, there's no switch for the glove box either. It's an electronic switch here on the screen, which you have to drill down into. There is something else going on here that I do appreciate. And if I'm using Waze for my navigation, well, that Waze map is shown here in the instrument cluster just with the basic information. This system is called Automotive Android OS. It's actually co-developed by Google, which now means your car knows more about you than your therapist and has better mapping skills than the GPS you used previously. The integration is delightfully seamless until you remember that Google's business model is selling your data. So I guess that means your car is now a very expensive surveillance device that happens to be fun to drive. There is a wireless charger here, and it's a useful kind of thing because that little fob that comes with this Polestar instead of a key needs to be charged wirelessly every few days, and it's sort of got a spot here, but it's not a great spot. If you like taking corners at any kind of speed, well, it's going to slide out of this location. Let's talk about this key situation because these seem to be solving a problem that no one had. Polestar replaced a traditional key with this rechargeable little fob and an NFC card that are supposed to be smarter than a regular key. The problem is that they seem to be as consistent as a coin flip operated by a toddler. I don't know how many times I've stood beside this Polestar trying to open the door looking like I'm trying to pay for groceries with a hotel room key, while the Polestar 3 just sits there judging my life choices. This seems to be innovation for innovation's sake, and I hope there's an OTA update that fixes this soon. In terms of spaciousness, well, this is much bigger than the Polestar 2, that's for sure. Lots of space here in the front row, as well as the second row, and under the hatch, tons of room. There's some storage in the floor underneath the hatch as well. Really appreciate how much space there is. I'm very comfortable in that second row. It's a great place for two adults to be, even on a long trip. This Bowers & Wilkins sound system is something I can't get enough of. I've actually gone for drives specifically to enjoy this Polestar 3 and the sound system. The fact that it's an EV, of course, makes the entire listening experience that much more enjoyable. After spending a fair bit of time behind the wheel of this Polestar 3 and living with it on a day-to-day basis, I've begun to appreciate this entire philosophy of minimalism. And there are more buttons inside this interior, and there are very few, by the way, but there are more buttons inside this interior than subscribers to this channel who have hit the notification bell. So let that be a reminder to you, my friends. Hit that notification bell, please. Does it launch? Well, yes, of course it launches, and it launches pretty hard. It's dual motor EV, lots of power, lots of torque. There is a launch control function, and it's even not necessary. Wow, this is quick in a straight line. Wow, that is impressive. So this will do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Top speed 130 miles an hour or so, but it's all that torque delivered instantaneously that is impressive, as with many EVs. But this Polestar 3 is a little bit different than most EVs. It's that dual clutch torque vectoring electric motor at the rear that's some serious engineering wizardry disguised as practical technology. It works exceptionally well. The thing is, instead of just braking the inside rear wheel to help you turn, this system actually accelerates the outside wheel to pull you through the corners. If you think about it this way, brake-based torque vectoring is kind of like forcing cooperation, but this situation, by accelerating that outside wheel, that is the kind of engineering that drivers like us really appreciate. In an era when we have 800, 900, 1,000 horsepower hypercars, 517 horsepower. It doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, this is electric horsepower. A lot of the time, gas engine horsepower is like a politician's promise. You have to wait for conditions to be perfect. Rev it up, warm it up, and hope the timing is right. No, I'm just kidding. But electric horsepower is like Amazon Prime. Instant, reliable, and slightly addictive, at least once you get used to having everything delivered immediately without the drama or waiting for things to warm up. Acceleration in this thing is shocking, not because it's extraordinarily quick, and really it's not. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, that's just about average for a decent EV SUV these days. There are plenty of quicker EVs, plenty of quicker supercars, but it's the way that acceleration is delivered. It's absolutely drama-free. Anytime you want maximum acceleration, just mat that throttle and this thing goes. There's no roar, no vibration, no building crescendo either, just immediate, relentless violence delivered with the emotional commitment of someone reading that IKEA assembly instruction manual. I think in this case, it's a situation where Polestar decided that this is the kind of acceleration that certain adults are looking for, those who have maybe moved on from internal combustion engines. In terms of handling, I have a lot to say about it, and after a few days in this Polestar 3, I've got all the confidence in the world to hustle this thing anywhere, anytime. But that's not to say that it's perfect, as we will get into. A lot of things I do like. Love the steering. There's not a lot of feel or feedback that you're getting through the front axle, but the steering's great in a number of ways. Strong on center, and there's a lot of articulation here. So it's got a very short turning radius. They've taken advantage of the platform and the fact that we've just got an electric motor at the front axles, so they can allow those front wheels to articulate a little bit further and then create this exceptionally short turning radius. Works very well in the real world. I think the best way to describe steering feel is maybe synthesized, but it's not really a criticism because most electrically assisted steering systems feel that way as well. The difference here is that Polestar's tuned it to actually feel good. It's precise, it's consistent, it's weighted properly for whatever you're doing. There are 3 levels of assist. I don't find any of those deliver any more feedback than any of the others. I just run it on the normal mode and I'm very happy that way. The suspension is really what makes this 3. The air springs, very well resolved, as are the adaptive dampers. They do a great job of body and wheel control, whether we're just cruising down a country road as we are now, or hustling this through some corners. The dynamics of the overall package aren't quite what I expected, as we will get into shortly. Although I think they could have taken this air suspension to one more level, it still corners relatively flat. Body roll is at an absolute minimum, and on top of that, it's very well controlled. The dampers just do a fine job in any situation, whether it's rough roads, whether it's cornering. They are constantly adjusting. As you know, they are adaptive dampers, but they do a tremendous job of controlling body and wheel motion all the time. The funny thing is, the suspension, these dampers and the air springs seem to sit in that sweet spot right in the middle to make sort of everybody happy. It's firm enough to make drivers like me and you happy, and it's also compliant enough to make your grandmother happy if she's riding in the back seat. I think they did leave something on the table. And with the air springs, for example, they could have introduced a little bit of active anti-roll tech here, but that's not part of the program. So as much as this corner is flat, there's still a little bit more body roll than maybe should have been here in the first place. And speaking of going a little bit further, I think they could have gone a little bit further with more aggressive settings with these dampers in terms of more compression and more rebound. Not that it's lacking, but it just could be a little bit more aggressive. On smooth surfaces, this Polestar 3 could benefit from one more aggressive setting to those dampers. I'm very impressed with these brakes on a day-to-day basis. Here, let's brake late into a corner. Love the way the pedal works. Great feel control with the brake pedal itself. And then there is the regenerative braking. I use the most aggressive one pedal drive setting, and that works great on a day-to-day basis. basis. It's natural, intuitive. I'm rarely touching the brake pedal, and when I do need to touch the brake pedal, well, it rewards me with great feel and control. Lots of power there, multi-piston Brembos on the front, and this thing does stop on a dime despite being about 5,800 pounds. Funny thing is, in day-to-day driving on that most aggressive regenerative braking mode, it's so natural and so intuitive. It just works. And if I didn't know my right foot wasn't stepping on the brake pedal, I couldn't tell the difference between regenerative braking and actual brake actuation, which would be embarrassing because explaining brake feel is actually part of my job description. Still, there's one thing I would like. What I'm asking myself is, why can't we have that sport sort of brake regen mode? So when we're entering a corner, we come off that throttle, get maximum regen so that there's some weight transfer onto the nose, we get crisp turn in, and then can come back on the throttle. When you're dancing with this thing at its limits, it's not the same as a really good internal combustion engine car. And don't misunderstand, this is not a huge criticism of this Polestar 3 because it's incredibly well resolved everywhere else. This is a marginal use case for crazy drivers like you and me. How do you spec yours? Well, I have some thoughts. What you are looking at is a 2025 Polestar 3 fully equipped, finished in snow white paint with the zinc and black Napa interior. In the US, base price is $67,500. Add the performance pack, the plus pack, this paint, and the Napa leather interior, and you get $92,000 as tested. In Canada, this is a launch edition, which starts at $107,100. Add the Napa leather for a total as tested of $114,100. In terms of speccing yours, there is one big consideration, and it comes down to color. The palette of colors that Polestar offers for the 3 is really not that exciting. I'd like to see some bolder colors that suit the minimalist lines of this 3, and unfortunately they're not available, at least not yet. That said, after a week and a lot of wheel time with this 3, I've come to appreciate everything that this is equipped with, and if you're spending this kind of money, I highly recommend every feature and option that this particular 3 is fitted with. And don't forget, at this price point, you could buy a couple of Teslas, but then you'd have to explain to people why you drive a Tesla and deal with Elon's Twitter habits affecting your resale value. My verdict? Well, here's the thing about Polestar's minimalist maximalism. It works, but just not in the way they think it does. All this tech doesn't make the driving experience simpler. It makes it more layered and more nuanced. The minimalism isn't in the hardware, it's in how the software presents complexity. The interface stays clean while the car handles the chaos. That may not be Scandinavian minimalism. That sounds more like German engineering wearing a Swedish sweater. Cross-shop this against the BMW iX, GV70 Electrified, or the Tesla Model X, and it won't be the fastest, it won't be the cheapest, and certainly won't be the most practical. But with this minimalist design, perhaps it'll make you feel the most intellectually superior at dinner parties. From my perspective, this Polestar 3 represents something new in the luxury EV space. It's technically sophisticated, aesthetically stunning, no question about that, and completely confident in its own skin. It's not trying to be anything else. The problem is this kind of confidence costs this kind of money, which is a lot for anyone who isn't a tech executive or a Scandinavian furniture baron. Admittedly, it took a little while for this Polestar 3 to draw me in with all of its charm, and draw me in it certainly did. Now I'm so comfortable behind the wheel. Love being here, love the way this drives, love the way it works for me in day-to-day life. And the thing is, those minor flaws that we've discussed in this episode are in such stark contrast to how good this is in every other way. It's almost jarring. It's gorgeous in here. It's a lovely place to be. And then in contrast, you got to deal with this situation, which can be incredibly frustrating. And when those things are addressed and in the hands of customers, this Polestar 3 is going to be very near EV SUV perfection. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 Polestar 3. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, well, you're not new. You know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring. So please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Polestar 3s. And since you've hung around this long, well, I'd love for you to enjoy the episode about my favorite Polestar of all time, the achingly beautiful one. Hope you enjoy that episode. Anyway, thanks again for watching. See you next time.